WordNerds! Happy Thursday! I recently saw a comment on one of our old live chats that reminded me that at one point we talked about doing a video on books on writing. And so today I wanted to give you a video of my book recommendations for books on writing, with all of them right here in front of you and all of the titles down in the description box so that hopefully you can have them to refer back to and you don't have to be like, what live chat was it that she recommended that? Oh no, I didn't write it down. Here we are! I am a very firm believer that it's important to not just read books for fun, but also to read books to help you study the craft of writing, whether or not you take any writing classes in a school setting. In Story Engineering by Larry Brooks, he talks about this concept and refers to sports as kind of a metaphor for it. He talked about how you can really like basketball, you could watch a ton of basketball, you could watch every game that your team plays, but watching the games alone isn't going to be enough to make you a good basketball player. I think I'm going to start with my favorite introductory level books and then kind of work my way down to the more and more advanced ones. First, I've got Take Off Your Pants by Libby Hawker. It's not about nudity, it's about plotting. This is a pretty short, pretty inexpensive book. I think you can get an ebook of it for a few bucks. This kind of breaks down outlining a novel when that is not your norm. So maybe you pants most books, but you're hoping to write a book really fast this time and shorten your revisions time later. This book will help you get through that. It's fun. I found it really inspiring. It breaks down like beats for you so that you can get an idea for what a classic plot might look like and then put your own spin on it. And most importantly, it's a really quick read. For me, when I'm in a plotting stage, I don't necessarily want to sit down and read a massive tome on how to dissect all of your plot, and this will hopefully give you the inspiration you need to make a loose outline of your book. In the same vein, but on the flip side of the writing process, we've got Self-Editing for Fiction Writers by Rennie Brown and Dave King. I have referred to this book pretty much through all of my years of writing seriously. I think it's so useful. It breaks down every stage of the revisions process, helps you find what things you should be looking for. It gives you exercises that help make it seem more manageable. Highly recommend if you are feeling at all daunted by revisions and you would like a book to help you get through it. I guess that's kind of the thing about a lot of these books is that you can find this advice other places. Maybe book learning just doesn't work for you, and that's fine. Maybe you prefer to watch videos or do like those masterclass classes or Skillshare or whatever, and that's fine. You don't have to learn things through a book. I do really like learning through books, and that's why we're here. So back to the books. Going along with the revisions book, I highly recommend having a copy of The Emotion Thesaurus by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. I want to say they have a new edition of this that's even bigger, so I need to get a new one probably. But I use this every time I revise, sometimes while I'm drafting. This isn't necessarily going to help you with your writing skill, but it does help you on the prose level. It takes different feelings and breaks down what that might look like in writing. So for example, if you're trying to show contempt, it'll give you physical signals like crossing your arms, downturned mouth, head tilting away. I don't know if you can see, I can't even go through all of them because there are so many. And then it gives you internal sensations, like what's going on inside of their body as they are feeling this thing. Rising blood pressure, tightening in the chest, as well as mental responses, like what their thoughts might be doing as this is happening. So negative thinking or insults. And then in this case, it also gives you cues of acute or long-term contempt and what that may escalate to, as well as what it might look like if you're suppressing contempt. Those authors do have other books as well on setting and character. I have not personally read those all the way through. For me, emotions is where it's at. That's where I need the most help. But if you're looking for help on character or setting as well, I would definitely recommend checking those out. I want to say they have like a subscription that you can get where you subscribe to the website and then you get access to all of the books. I'll put more information on that in the description. Now we're gonna move into the specifics section. Wonder Book by Jeff Vandermeer. Definitely recommend if you're looking for writing inspiration. It's not my personal favorite for like actually sitting down and building a world, but if you're wanting to feel like creative and super inspired, then I definitely recommend checking out this book. It does give some pretty good examples, but most of it is pretty surface level. But if that's what you need right now, here it is, Wonder Book by Jeff Vandermeer. If you're looking to write funny things, I highly recommend The Hidden Tools of Comedy, The Serious Business of Being Funny by Steve Kaplan. I was finding that I wanted to be funny, and I do think sometimes I'm funny in real life, but I was having a hard time translating that to the page. Most of this is focused on TV and movies as the construct around which you base your comedy, but I still found it really useful for writing in general, because while it uses lots of examples from TV and movies, it teaches you the theory of why things are funny and what makes things funnier, rather than just telling you, well, this is funny on screen. So highly recommend this if you want to sometimes be funny, but maybe you want to be romantic, in which case I recommend On Writing Romance by Lee Michaels. This is mostly a beginner's look at writing in the romance genre. However, I think it's really important to study writing in all the genres if you are going to be including those as maybe subgenres in your book. I like having romance in my books, but it feels a little like the bane of my existence while I'm writing it. And I think part of why it felt that way was because I didn't know how to do it well. I had studied a lot of other plot, mystery, thriller, all of that stuff, but I had never really studied, well, what makes a romance swoon-worthy? What makes readers root for a character? How do I give them that chemistry? And this book broke all of that down. Now we're gonna take a little bit of a dive into screenplays. You might like writing screenplays. It's not my primary interest in writing, but I do think there's a lot to learn about concise storytelling from studying screenplays, and so I think even as a novelist, it's important to study it. This little tiny one is called Writing the Pilot. I used it to learn about writing pilots for TV. It's very short. You could read it easily in an hour, maybe two. And while I did learn a lot about the process of writing and selling a pilot, which was interesting to me, more so, I learned a lot about premise and creating a cast that is fascinating enough to hook someone very quickly, which is a very specific TV writing thing. Yeah, you have to hook people really quickly, otherwise there's no way your pilot is gonna do well, but it can be translated to books super easily. So again, that is Writing the Pilot by William Rabkin. Whew, I don't know if I've ever recommended this many books in my life. This next book is the classic studying screenplays book. So classic that it is just called Screenplay by Sid Field. This takes a deep dive into storytelling generally on the loose framework of a screenplay. So you will learn a little bit about the technicalities of what needs to go into the format of structuring a screenplay and stuff, but mostly Sid Field just talks about what makes a compelling story. I really enjoyed this. It's definitely a beginner's look at screenplays, but I didn't feel like it was a beginner analysis of storytelling, which perfectly leads me to the big ones, the ones that I use most of all now. John Truby's The Anatomy of Story is probably, in my opinion, / in the opinion of lots of authors who I really admire, the best book that you could possibly read on storytelling. I haven't found another book at this point that really dissects what goes into a compelling story. He does come at it from a screenwriting perspective, but I very rarely felt like it didn't also apply perfectly to novel writing, because it wasn't an analysis of, well, this is how you write a screenplay. It was an analysis of, this is how you write a story that is going to get people hooked and that is going to be unforgettable. It helps you make webs of your characters and your story and helps you fit different archetypes in so that they create conflict with each other. It provides a solid framework that you can still have some room to wiggle around in, so it's not quite as limiting as a regular beat sheet that you download off of Google might be. And yeah, I have a bookmark in it because I just keep going back to it. I am a huge, huge fan. If you know the basics of storytelling, then I think you should pick up this book and check it out. And lastly, The Emotional Craft of Fiction by Donald Mass. This is a book that kind of had to grow on me a little bit. When I first started reading it, I liked it, but I wasn't that impressed, and I felt like there was kind of a dubious example in there of character building, and so I put it down for a while and didn't come back to it. But eventually I did, and I'm really glad that I did, because this book has some of the best exercises that I've ever found in any book. If you got this book and just did the exercises alone, I think you would benefit a lot from it. This one looks at not just the plot structure of a story, but really breaking it down so it's emotionally resonant. What can you do to write a story that will tug at readers' heartstrings and make them feel things. Doing one of the exercises in this book is the only time I've gotten really emotional while writing. I know some people are like they love their characters so much and they make them cry, but that's never really been the case for me. It's not that I don't cry super easily, it's just that for some reason I don't cry super easily while doing a different task like writing. But this book did that to me. And it hurt, but in a good way, I hope. So definitely recommend. And then one last video creator note is the book I'm reading right now, which I referenced at the beginning of this video, Story Engineering by Larry Brooks. I'm not finished with this one yet, so I don't feel like I can make a really solid recommendation, but I am enjoying it a lot. Larry Brooks breaks it down into mastering the 6 core competencies of successful writing, which is definitely taking a bit of a deeper look than some of the beginner level books I've read on plotting and all of that. If you give The Anatomy of Story a try and you're like, this is not for me, then I would definitely recommend giving this book a try. It takes a slightly different approach to looking at story. It is specifically geared towards novels, which is nice. And that is it for real this time. Thank you so much for watching today, Word Nerds. If there is a book on writing that you love that I missed, let me know down in the comments. I will be studying writing for the rest of my life, hopefully, so I would love to have more books to add to my list as well. And I know there are some books on writing that I have read that I didn't recommend in here, not because they aren't good, but just because they aren't really ones that I refer back to ever. The world is full of good books on writing, and it's important to study, find the ones that work for you. As with any writing advice, there's no one way to write a book, so there's no one book that will work for every writer. Be sure to tune in this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our usual live chat. I cannot wait to see you all then, and until then, stay nerdy.